Hi, I'm Brad Dacus, president and founder of the Pacific Justice Institute. On this week's Dacus Report, we're going to interview one of our attorneys about a very important case dealing with a professor at a university who was fired because of his biblical Christian worldview. You're going to find this very eye-opening. We're also going to interview the head of the National Religious Broadcasters Association, and we're going to talk to him about a very serious trend that we see in the United States Senate, and that is attempting to deny people approval because of their faith. You're also going to find that very eye-opening as well. Now, there's several ways you can listen to this broadcast or watch it. One is you can demand it on podcast. Two, you can also listen to this on our website, pji.org, or you can listen to it on a radio station near you. Go check it out. We have with us on the line one of our attorneys, Michael Peffer, who heads up our Orange County office. Michael, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure, Brad. Thank you.
Okay, now, Michael, this professor that we're talking about has been a professor for a while. He has a good reputation. But give us the facts of what happened so people can understand what we're talking about when we talk about the fact that he was fired because of his faith.
Yeah, because, Brad, one thing is very interesting about this case. We always hear people gripe about the concept of tenure. Oh, it's hard to get rid of teachers in tenure. But here we have a professor, Eric Thompson. He's been a professor at Moreno Valley College for over 11 years. Tenured professor, good reviews, a good guy, liked by students, and yet they fired him because he communicated ideas that the university didn't agree with. And those ideas largely stemmed out of his teaching during the time that the Obergefell case, the same-sex marriage case in 2015, was being discussed in society. And he's teaching a sociology class where the family unit is discussed. That's the study of sociology.
Right. You'd expect that. Absolutely. And in fact, I'm sure there are many professors across the country who were openly saying how much they were in favor of the decision and same-sex marriage, and they favored that. Well, this professor took a different perspective, and it's because of that perspective that he was fired?
That's right. It developed where a couple of complaints, which were later, the evidence does not even support the complaints as they were, but this gentleman was asking questions that were not designed to rile the students up, but were designed to have them think through the issue of same-sex marriage in a class that should be able to look at the big picture, both sides of the argument.
Yeah, and that's just good academics. I don't see why there should have been a problem there, considering the fact that other professors have no problem raging and ramping about their beliefs on these issues from the left, and yet this person, because of his biblical Christian worldview on the issue, was fired. Did he at any time try to convert people to join his church or his religion, or was it just simply the fact they didn't like his biblical worldview that he expressed on same-sex marriage?
Yeah, it's the latter, Brad, and you raise a good point. Here, this guy, he actually wasn't even trying to say you ought to think like this in citing the biblical worldview that he has. He was simply giving both sides of the argument and asking under this, as we know, the Socratic method in school, where we ask the students to talk about an issue that they may disagree with, but we ask them to think through the whole problem.
Right.
And that's exactly what he was doing. And notably, one of the complaints involved one student in the class that got particularly upset. And the investigation that the school did, I should say so-called investigation, they came up with all kinds of conclusions about what Eric had done. And it turns out we have a recording of that actual class, and it's very, very different than the student complained about. So
Wow.
this is completely trumped up. I
Yeah,
mean,
and it also shows their intent.
yes.
I mean, when they say, "Oh, he did this, this, this," and then we show, no, he didn't do that or didn't say that, then it's very clear that their goal is one of bigotry and discrimination against people of faith. And everyone knows our universities, even a lot of private universities that have crosses on them sometimes, have professors that are very more and more dogmatic against Christianity. But this is particularly at a public university is where we see this the most. What college or university are we talking about here, just so people can know? What's the name of the professor?
The professor is Eric Thompson, and he's been at Moreno Valley College, a junior college, for 11 years.
11 years. 11 years.
Yes.
And he was terminated because of his bringing up this topic for discussion in the classroom. And it just baffles me. But yet, but we're seeing this more and more. This isn't the first professor we've represented, has it?
It's not, and Brad, unfortunately, this is becoming more and more common, as you know, and we're in a situation here where for a long, long time in our American history, the idea of academic freedom was important to the university. We wanted professors to be able to push the young people and to think, to
Right.
critically think about problems.
Right.
But now we're saying, no, we can't make them think about something they disagree with. Otherwise, we're going to run the guy out of town. And that's exactly what Moreno Valley College, through the district, Riverside Community College District, through their so-called investigation and procedures, which we've been representing him now for quite a long time. We've been through all the hearings, and including appearing with him at the Board of Trustees meeting. And now we've gotten the notice of termination from the district. And so now we're going to have to take the next step, which is going to be arbitration, and after that, we're likely going to file a lawsuit.
Right. Wow. And the thing is, it's not like that. It's not like we haven't given them notice as to how they're messing up. I mean, we have represented them, as you said. I represented him already before their board, and they decided to go the wrong direction, even after having the information presented before them. And I guess they think they can get away with it.
Yeah, I think they do, and frankly, the only thing I can think about all this is that they decided that they were going to make this decision no matter what evidence they got or no matter what evidence they didn't have, simply because they were trying to get rid of another guy who thinks differently than the majority of the professors, in that he has a biblical worldview.
Right. But he never proselytized his faith, didn't try to convert anyone. He simply revealed his perspective, which happens to be a biblical worldview with regard to same-sex marriage. But do you think some of this also, Michael, is the result of a growing attitude of people in our society that there's only one way to view same-sex marriage, and if you don't view it that way, then you're a bigot and you should be punished, fined, lose your job, have your, I mean, I just see that growing more and more. And the fact that we're seeing it so blatantly at public universities or public colleges, I think should be alarming for everyone, particularly when they send their students to a college now, especially a government college, to think that the odds are greater than not that they're going to be overwhelmed with just real openly brash, expressive professors who have an attitude and worldview that is one of, if you don't believe the way I do, then you are, and then fill in the blank with all kinds of names or pejoratives. I just think it's very disturbing. And parents today, I think, it should be very concerned about this. And I want parents to know that if you're out there listening to this broadcast and you think, hey, is this something we should be concerned about? Go to our website, pacificjustice.org. There you'll take a look and you'll see this case and other cases we have. And some of them are involving universities, some public schools, high schools that we're dealing with, because it's a growing trend in our country, in our society today. And that's why we at Pacific Justice Institute are willing to go to bat where it's needed. In this case, this professor in Moreno Valley, California. But If you're listening to this in Maine, Massachusetts, New York, or Florida, or Texas, Ohio, wherever, let us know. Let us know if you know of someone being unjustly treated this way as a professor or as a government employee, to have them contact us so we can provide them the representation that they need. I tell you, Michael, I am very disturbed by this, and yet it's the bottom line is we know that this is happening, not just here. This kind of intimidation is happening in other places as well, and we need to not just take it lightly. We need to go to bat and stand united when we see these things happening. Matt, I really appreciate all you're saying and on this. Okay, I have 2 minutes. Thank you. I thought I was over. Thank you. Okay. Sorry, Michael. Okay. Michael, we're right now we're going to be arguing this for the arbitration board, right? And then what's our time frame on that?
That should happen between the next 45 days. One thing that's really interesting in this, Brad, is that there has been a little bit of a movement following the termination by professors who say they totally disagree with Eric Thompson, our client, but they say this is ridiculous what this university is doing. Right. So I have to say there are people who hold the exact opposite worldview as Eric Thompson, but they are disgusted by what Moreno Valley College has done here. Right,
and that's good. That's good that they themselves realize that, hey, they could be next. Sure. If their view is not, left wing enough, if it's not intolerant enough or tolerant enough, then they could be fired next. And I think that's really good that they have enough savvy to realize how dangerous this is when we allow public, taxpayer-funded universities to become camps of indoctrination at the expense of education for our children. I really appreciate your time, Michael, and the work that you're doing on this case. And I just encourage people out there, pray for Michael, pray for our attorneys, and pray for this professor, that he not give up, that he not lose heart, because it's so important that we stand our ground when it comes to the freedom and opportunity to not just live our faith, but also share and manifest our faith when it comes to our worldviews, and especially for professors like him. Hey, Michael, thank you again for being on the program. Keep up the great work.
Thank you, Brad.
Take care.